Alrighty, I see most of you have connected to audio. We're going to go ahead and kick things off. Thank you guys so much for joining today. We've got a couple great presenters lined up for you. Today we're going to talk through the pressing need for digital risk protection and how you protect against risk to your business. We've got folks from Digital Shadows and Digital Logistix on the line. A couple housekeeping items for you before we get started here. As you've noticed when you joined, your phones are muted. They're going to stay that way for the duration of the webcast just to reduce the background noise, make sure we get a good recording for you guys. We do encourage you throughout the presentation to submit questions for our presenters. To do that, locate the Q&A panel, which is found on the bottom right-hand side of your Event Center console. Just submit questions there. We'll get to as many as we can. Any that we don't get to live, we'll follow up with you afterwards in email. If you have any questions or having issue with audio or video, you can either message me privately using the chat feature, or you can email messages@digitalshadows.com and we will get you sorted. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Ricardo Martinez, Director of Business Development from Digital Logistix, and Ben Smith, who is a sales engineer here at Digital Shadows. So I'm going to hand things off first to Ricardo, who's going to kick things off.
Thanks very much, Anna. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. Thanks for joining our call today. I'm just going to kick it off here. So, Digital Logistix, we're a value-added distributor focusing on cybersecurity, and we've added several very unique and I think very interesting security vendors to our line. One of these being Digital Shadows, and I just wanted to go over quickly why we chose and how we got to this relationship with Digital Shadows. So the cybersecurity dilemma, and all of you know this, and I'm not going to bore you with all the different threats and new things that are coming out, or statistics among the millions of malware that are popping up and ransomware. But threats are ever increasing. They're coming from all different ways. And it's just a concern. I mean, you're having to deal with so many different vendors, so many different problems, and it's a very difficult way of managing the business. And next is you have also the dilemma of your 4 Ps, what I call the 4 Ps, which is your people, your process, your products, and also your partners. So who you're working with. Who do you have internally that are managing your tools and technologies? Is there a business process around all of these? So you're trying to deal with that as well. And also the maturity level. So what stage are you in? Are you initial stage? Are you just having the basic security? Are you trying to get a little more maturity? Are you using SIM? Are you using technologies that are covering the cloud? So, and NIST has the cybersecurity framework. And what areas are you covering today? So, and I think this is something very interesting, is the number of security vendors that are out there. So who do you partner with? And that's where we come into play. Is we are always participate in the RSA conference, Black Hat, all the cybersecurity events, and we actually have one-on-one conversations with all these vendors, see what their technology is covering, and as you know, all these different threats need different ways of addressing them. And you can see just by the categories in cybersecurity, there's over 15 different categories, and then there's multiple vendors in each one of these categories. So it's an eyesore to see how you're going to be dealing with this, and that's where we come in, and that's why we try to address and find which are the unique players that are actually going to help you maintain a better security. So we put this in our security funnel. So we go through and have those conversations. We go to RSA and talk with executives, see what technology is out there, see what our customers are looking for, and out of that comes building relationships and establishing which are the real security vendors that are going to be addressing and really helping our customers to achieve what their goal is of being more secure and minimizing their risk and the threats and the breaches. So out of these, Digital Logistix now representing Digital Shadows for Latin America. We have also on our line card Cylance on the endpoint protection, BitGlass, Anomaly, which also works in conjunction with Digital Shadows. They're partners there. Demisto on the orchestration and management. Logarithm on the SIM side and Okta on the two-factor, and also some traditional vendors like McAfee that we represent for the Caribbean, and Tenable that we're also working closely with. So from that, what Digital Logistix intends to be is your trusted cybersecurity distributor. So we work closely with these vendors. We have a unique offering because we have a team that are experts in security and can also offer services, use security assessments. We can go through training. We've also managed incident response. So whenever you do have a breach or you have an incident you need addressing, we're there to help you and find the right partners to do this with you. We're including next generation security solutions. We're not looking to add the traditional vendors, and we're trying to basically give you the newest and the greatest and the best solutions for your environment. Under these services also we have managed security, we have cloud services, implementation services of these technologies. We help you also with compliance and privacy and forensics. And also we're connected. So our CEO and our team, we have personal relationships with a lot of the executives in the cybersecurity space, CEOs of the most renowned security vendors out there. So we have that direct relationship, and we help channel that for you guys. So whenever you guys have an issue or you want to see what's out there as far as security, we can actually talk to the leaders in the industry and help you address that, as well as the top security resellers in Latin America. So with our relationships and being in the industry for a while, I mean, this is very tight-knit environment and so sector where we have those relationships. We have a lot of the security resellers in Latin America that can help address your security problems. So without further ado, now I'll pass it over to Ben Smith, who will give you some more insight into how Digital Shadows can help you secure your environment and give you the visibility and intelligence. Ben, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Ricardo. Hi, everyone. Nice to be with you this morning, this afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about Digital Shadows and how we help protect against digital risks. So, as I said, I'm one of the sales engineers here, and I've been doing this for a few years now. So, hopefully, I'll be able to give you a pretty good overview of what we do and how we do it. So, the first slide I'm going to open up with, obviously, we're very proud of this. We were named the leader in digital risk protection in the Forrester Wave earlier this year. You can see that they gave us the strongest current offering and the strongest strategy. We're also very happy that we achieved the highest performance rating in 9 of the areas where they were assessing. So we include this in all of our slides because we're very happy about it, but we also think it really helps us tell our story about how we help our customers to do the digital risk protection piece that they need to do. So why is this so important? Well, we think right now there's a perfect storm for digital risk and for cyber threats. There are more points of exposure. Obviously, websites are being created daily. Things are spinning up on the deep and dark web, which you may even have no idea of. Things that are just coming up and going down without really any notice whatsoever. You want to be able to know what's out there and be able to understand if there's anything pertinent to your organization that's appearing on there as well. As Ricardo said, attacks are getting more sophisticated. Threat actors are getting easier access to tools. They're getting circulated further online. You want to know whenever there's anything going around with discussions about your organization. And you want to be informed about the latest techniques and also really how easy it is to use them. You want to know if something that traditionally appeared quite difficult to use is now being circulated with an easy-to-use guide, for example. You want to understand how sophisticated these things are and what the kind of reach is for people to be able to use them. Thirdly, there's more to protect. So as we know, if anyone's gone through acquisitions or if anyone's setting up any IT infrastructure in the cloud or anything like that, there's year on year lots more assets to try to protect. So if you're acquiring another company, you might acquire a whole bunch of infrastructure and a whole lot of other things that you don't necessarily have too much visibility into. You want to be able to get your arms around that pretty quickly to understand what kinds of risks might be out there, what kinds of threats might affect that. So that's the more things to protect. And then finally, there are increased regulations. So anyone dealing with the EU, you're going to have to deal with GDPR. There are other regional and industry-specific regulations and compliance issues as well. And a lot of these have something to do with privacy, something to do with data protection. And we can help and we can step in and help with that as well by helping you identify where that data is if it's been exposed on the internet. So this leads us to the question of what we actually do to help with these risks and help with these kinds of issues. So our kind of question to prospects and people that are interested in the product is, what if you could be notified when your data is exposed online? What if you could be notified when cyber criminals plan to target you? If your employees or suppliers put you at risk? Key members of staff are threatened or impersonated? Criminals are selling your data on the dark web, or flaws in your infrastructure put you at risk? So these are a few of the examples of things that we can find, and really that's our goal here, is to identify all of these digital risks and bring them to our customers, importantly, as it says at the bottom, with minimal false positives and with mitigation options. So I'm just going to go through a few of the other things that we can spot using Searchlight, our service. So we have 7 different key areas which we focus on. There's a whole lot of different subcategories that fall underneath these. I'm just going to run through these very quickly, and later on I've got a couple of examples of concrete examples of things that we've seen for customers that we've sanitized for demo purposes. So we look for cyber threats. That's pretty much what you would expect with cyber threats. Is anyone saying, hey, you should go and DDoS this website, or hey, I've got access to this banking infrastructure? Whatever that might be, we're going to identify that. We're going to look for data exposure. This could be things like credentials, documents, code, any intellectual property that might be leaking outside of the boundary. We're going to identify that as well. We also know that brand protection and brand exposure plays a significant role nowadays in security. So we're going to look for things like spoof profiles for the organization. Are there profiles being set up by individuals or by groups that claim to be your organization's support account or something that customers are going to get in touch with? You want to know if that's happening, and that's something that we can find for you as well. Another big one, which kind of ties into the slide a couple of slides ago, is third-party risk. This is the points of exposure increasing. So we can look into various third-party suppliers. You can let us know who your suppliers are. We can keep an eye on them and see if they're being involved in anything that they shouldn't be. But also importantly, we can look to how you interface with your suppliers. Do you share API keys into your infrastructure with your suppliers? Do you know where that API key is going? If you give us a snippet of that, and this is a very specific example, if you give us a snippet of that API key, we can go and look and see if it's found on GitHub or on any developer forums or any repositories out there, which might suggest that that's been compromised, that your third party perhaps hasn't been taking as much care of it as they should have done. We can also look for VIP exposure. This would be things basically targeted towards any executives or high-ups at the company. This is definitely something that we find on a regular basis, spoof profiles for individuals trying to find a way into the organization. We can also look for indicators of potentially business email compromise. If there's anyone trying to phish your employees or your VIPs, that's definitely something that we want to let you know about as well. Physical threats, if you're an organization that has important physical locations, as long as we know about those, we can find any mention of those and talk about those with you as well, help you understand what people are talking about on the deep and dark web with regard to your sensitive locations. And then finally, infrastructure exposure is really just a bonus for visibility here. We're going to help you understand what's going on with your infrastructure. Are there any exposed ports? Are there any certificates that have expired or that are about to expire? And are there any TLS and SSL issues? Are there things that are vulnerable to Heartbleed, vulnerable to Poodle, vulnerable to any of these things that are fairly old examples, but they are still relevant nowadays because this could be an easy access point. And like I said, the threat landscape is growing here, so more and more people are going to be able to exploit those vulnerabilities. So that's pretty much what we're looking for under all of these different categories. And like I said, there's a lot more in what we can find, and I'll show you a little bit more about that later. But you might be asking, how do we actually find that information? Now, I went through a lot of specific examples there, but really how the service works is we take in information about you, about your organization, and this is really all the work that you'd have to do on your end to get something like this up and running. So we take in the asset data, and this we actually can help you sort of understand what you might need to give us as well. Crucially, with our service, we do have an analyst in the loop, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But what this helps us do is help you identify those key areas based on your business, based on your industry, and really give you suggestions about those types of assets that we should include into the coverage so that we can identify those points of exposure for you. So really this slide is showing that those assets are things that we go and search for on a constant basis. We're going and looking across all of those different points of exposure for anything that's relevant to your organization. And if we actually go to the next slide, we can see how this kind of works. So we're monitoring what we believe and what Forrester is accredited us with is the broadest range of sources on the open, deep, and dark web. So we look for all of those different assets across all of those different sources that we looked at in the previous slide. And we bring back all of those mentions into our internal system. Now, the second box here, the assessment, is really important for us, and this is one of our key differentiators. So we have an analyst in the loop, we have an analyst team. They're going to go and look through all of the mentions of the company after our automated analytics has gotten rid of some of the false positives. The analysts are going to go and assess all of the information that's come through into our system, and they're going to get rid of any of the false positives that are coming through there. So this will reduce the noise. This is also going to allow us to give you added context, because everything we provide comes with some analyst write-up, which will allow you to understand the threat there. And the final one is remediation. So this kind of ties into what I was just saying, but the analyst will talk about what you can actually do. Where are the contact details to get rid of this particular content? Or who do I contact to do this? What information do I need to basically do my job? And that's really what we want to help you do, is to be more efficient and give you all the information and resources so that you can actually deal with these risks as they arise. This again kind of talks a little bit about how it works. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but like I said, we have the mentions online. We detect all of the mentions of all of the assets that are submitted to us. We analyze them both automatically and then via human. And crucially, everything that goes out as an incident here into our portal, that goes through an analyst, and they will provide that context for you. So the last couple of slides that I've got before we open up the floor to any questions are a few of the use cases that we've got for various different incident types. So data exposure is my first one here. Obviously, you can see all of the things on the left-hand side. So these are some of the examples of things that we would find across our customer base and things that we've seen in the past. So personal health information, PII data. We can take in BIN numbers for those of you in financial services organizations. We can have a look for any credit cards that are getting exposed out there. And we can also look for cloud storage. So we just unveiled a capability that's able to look across FTP, S3, rsync, lots of other sort of file sharing services to identify what might be out there and what might be publicly accessible, importantly, that's pertinent to your business. We've also been able to find information about M&As, about embargoes. We've found examples of meeting minutes put on Pastebin, for example. And we've also seen things about intellectual property, software, and product design. If we move on to the brand exposure, obviously I was saying that this is important, and there's a lot of different use cases for us in the brand protection category. We can look for typo squatting, we can look for phishing. We can also look at your mobile applications to see if there are any spoofed or cloned versions being put out onto the internet. And like I mentioned earlier, we can look for any spoofed social media profiles. This one is a particular pain point for a lot of our customers. They're receiving updates whenever we see a new account being registered on Twitter, for example, claiming to be affiliated with the organization. If customers are reaching out to that, they want to know about that immediately. In the same vein with social media, we can also look for oversharing and also VIP impersonation. So if you have project names or something like that, that could be one of the configuration items that you give us, and we'll go and look to see if that's exposed anywhere on social media. And then for any retailers, fake coupons, counterfeit goods and gift cards, and again, fake social media profiles for those retailers. And then moving on to the cyber threat slide, this is my penultimate slide here. We're really able to find lots of different items under the cyber threat umbrella, just depending on the organization. We regularly see configuration files for Sentry MBA, for all kinds of other types of malware, and we'll be able to tell you when your login page is getting targeted by that malware. Again, counterfeit goods, scams, DDoS attack planning. We're also able to give you information on the different actors and campaigns that are out there through our portal in our intelligence repository. We look for website defacement. A couple of years back, we were following the World Cup in Brazil. Okay, this is a few years ago now. But this was something we were able to give back to customers, those customers that were sponsoring the event, that were sponsoring any high-profile event. When hacktivist groups are going and defacing those regional websites that aren't necessarily taken care of or are sort of low down on the list, we're able to watch out for that sort of thing occurring and let the customer know about that. And then finally, again, we give more context around what's going on with those threats. And then there's just a couple of other slides here just to show you what else you get with the service. So of course, you get all the incidents that we've published, that we've processed for you with all that context about all of those different threats. But we want to make sure that we're an important resource for you. So we give you the weekly Threat Intelligence Digest. This would be, you can get this as a customer. We'll be able to give you the latest threats that our researchers found. You can actually subscribe to it now and get a sort of a stripped down version just to see the sort of content that we provide. And we also have our Shadow Talk weekly podcast. So wherever you consume your podcast, feel free to go and search for Digital Shadow Shadow Talk. There's some really good content on there from one of my colleagues, Michael Marriott, and he is on there every week with guest speakers about lots of interesting topics from the week. So we're really trying to keep our finger on the pulse with security in general, as well as giving you specifics about your organization. And then my final slide, I see that someone's already asked a question about trialing the service. One of the ways in which you can do that is you can actually test drive Searchlight for free for 7 days. The caveat here is this is just a sort of guided tour of the portal. This is perfect for those of you who don't want to put too much time into this. You don't necessarily need to provide us with any configuration data. This just allows you to hop into the demo portal, see what the incidents look like, look at the intelligence repository, go and search using Shadow Search, which is our free text search across all of our sources. This is a really great way for you to go and have a good feel around and see what the service looks like. But there is also the option for POCs, and I guess I'll kind of answer that question preemptively. So we do offer POCs if you're interested in trying the service and what it looks like for you specifically, as opposed to this kind of test drive guided tour. You will be able to do that. You can do a 2-week POC. All we really do there is we ask you for some information to seed the system. We get through the backlog of things that happen when we search for a customer for the first time. And then we get into real-time monitoring mode for probably a week and a half, and that will give you a fairly good grip on what it's like to be a Digital Shadows customer. It's really supposed to be as close as possible to the full service experience. And you get to work with someone like me in the sales engineering side. So we'll hopefully be able to help you and solve any issues that come up. So that's one of the questions answered there. But I think that's pretty much it from me. If there's any questions that anyone has, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A. But thank you very much for your time, and hopefully this has been a useful look at Digital Shadows and how we help you reduce your risks.
Yeah, thank you so much to Ricardo and Ben for your presentations. We did get a couple questions, but quick plug for anybody. If you do have any additional questions, now is the time to submit them. We'll get to as many as we can in the next couple of minutes before we wrap up. Quickly, before we get to questions, for all the attendees, you will be getting a follow-up email that includes the recording from today's session, a link to download the slides, and a link to register for this test drive, a free 7-day trial that Ben spoke to. So you will get all these links in the next day or so. So really quickly, I know you answered part of the question, Ben, around the proof of concept and the trial of our service. There was an additional question around, do we work through MSPs that serve multiple SMB end user organizations? I'm not sure if that's one you guys want to take offline and talk with that person directly.
Yeah, I got that, and I already addressed it with Sean. I appreciate it. So we're good.
Awesome, great. And then there was one other question, I think was in relation, Ben, to one of the slides you showed around the Forrester report, where it did show some of the other companies that play in this space. Someone asked, how does your service differentiate from other companies in the space? Do you want me to pull back up that Forrester slide?
Sure, why not? That's a great question, and happy to talk about that a little bit. So as you can see, there's a fair amount of different companies offering this kind of thing in the same sort of space, and there's a few different ways in which we like to differentiate ourselves from them. So the first one, I already touched on it a little bit. We feel that we do have the largest coverage in the industry, and the reason we feel that is we've been around a long time, and at first glance that maybe doesn't seem like a logical answer, but when you think about it, there's a lot of different sites out there that we need to develop connectors for. We need to understand how to configure our system to go and pull information from that. So we spend a lot of time in developing lots of different connections into sites where we don't necessarily have APIs to be able to do that. And that, over time, means that we've gathered a lot of different information from a lot of different sources. Now, also, that talks to our kind of dark web service as well. So we've managed to get into various different platforms just because we've been around a while. We've got people who've been able to spend the time to go and get personas and profiles to get into those places. So the coverage is a really key part of what we have here. The second one is the analyst in the loop. So a lot of the companies in here, they don't have analysts. They're a tool that you can use to run your own queries and do your own searching. And we understand that for a lot of companies, that's just not the best option. You are probably strapped for resources. You probably would appreciate someone doing the work for you or the bulk of the work for you, and really just delivering you things that are relevant and that are actionable. So that's what the analyst in the loop does. Critically as well, it removes false positives. We work very closely with you to understand what your requirements are and to enable us to really work as a team with you to show you exactly what you need to do your job and to be successful. And the final side of it is the relevance, and I've already sort of touched on that as well. So coupled with the fact that you actually tell us what to search for, you give us a list of items that are important to you, and we can make those search results as relevant as possible, both with the targeted searches and also with the analyst in the loop. They can make sure that everything that comes through has been vetted to make sure it's actually pertinent to your organization. So I think that's probably the three differentiators for us in general.
Great. And I'll add actually a link to this report into the follow-up email so that you guys can read the full kind of criteria that Forrester used to judge all the other players in this space and how they ranked folks. We did have a couple other questions come in. I want to be mindful of time as well, but we'll get to as many as we can. The first one, what are the sources that Searchlight pulls from specifically across the deep and dark web?
Yeah, so can't really get into too many specifics about the deep and dark web, but I can give you some examples of types of areas that we cover. So we have a spider that goes across Tor and across I2P, and that gets seeded with information from our other searches. So whenever we see a URL that looks like it's on the dark web, that gets added automatically. Things that we already have, we've got the repository of information that was present on the Alpha Bay forum, for example. I know that that's no longer around, but we do keep the information. So importantly, if there is anything or if there was anything on there that's relevant, that's useful, we can query that. Of course, we do have new information as well from marketplaces, forums, and we do keep on top of things as they come up. One other thing to talk about is we do have a closed sources team. So some of the sites we don't actually go and look at automatically. We have a human team go and look at it. And this is because we're not sure that we can actually get away with it. We want to make sure that we can keep access to that site. And by doing that manually, that looks more like a human user, and that goes with our profile of being a quote-unquote criminal on one of these forums. So there are a lot of different sites that we cover. I think going further down the line, if we're in discussions with any of you, we can go into a bit more detail about what we can actually do. But we've got a large amount of domains on the dark web. I think there's around about 3 million sources that are active at any one time across the dark web, and that's all searchable both by us and by shadow search as well within the portal.
Great. And then one final question that we got. It's a two-parter. One, how is the solution deployed? Is it SaaS-based? And then second part to that, do you have integrations, and what types of integrations do you have?
Yeah, so first question, yep, we're SaaS-based, so that all you need to do is go to our portal to log in and to get access to the information. All the configuration is done via the portal as well. There's no agents to install, nothing like that, no hardware. So it's pretty frictionless in terms of deployment. The second question is, yes, we do have a lot of integrations with all of the major kind of vendors out there that you might expect. If you actually head to our website, there's an up-to-date list. As this is being recorded, I'm going to give the ones that we've got right now, but that is subject to change. So a few of the examples, we have things like Splunk, ServiceNow, QRadar. We've also got Phantom and Demisto, where you can push information through their workflows from our portal. And we've also got a whole bunch of others that are available on our website under the integrations page. We really want to make sure that we're fully integrated into the ecosystem. We know that you've got a lot of other products. We don't want to make it difficult for you. We want to make sure that you can use our information, whether that's within our portal or within another platform that you might be using. So absolutely, we've got plenty of integrations there.
Great. Well, that's all the questions that we have. If anyone does think of questions after the presentation, please just send them to messages@digitalshadows.com, and we'll get them in front of Ricardo and Ben. So before I wrap things up, Ben, Ricardo, any last minute comments for our attendees today?
I just want to thank everybody for joining today, and also to reach out to us with any other additional questions, and we can also set up those demos and POCs as Ben mentioned. So
Yeah, just to echo that, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully this was a useful insight, and we're happy to answer any questions offline that you might have as well.
Great. So as one final thank you, appreciate everybody spending some time with us today. We hope you found it useful. We will be sending those follow-ups within the next business day, so keep an eye out for those, and we'll send you an invitation to our next webcast series. So thank you so much to Ricardo and Ben for the presentations today, and we will see you guys on our next webcast. Take care.